Hello, good morning. I am Shridhar Bhat, Assistant Professor of English at Dr. G. Shankar Government Women's First Grade College and PG Study Center, Ajjarkadu, Udupi. My email ID is shridhar.bhat@yahoo.co.in. During this video lecture, let me make a humble attempt to take you through a famous poem titled The Punishment in Kindergarten, written by a well-known Indo-Anglian poet, Kamala. This poem has been prescribed for the first B.Sc second semester students of Mangalore University. Of course, you may find it in the syllabus of some other university as well. Let me tell you in brief something about the poet. Kamala was born in the Malabar region of Kerala state of India. She became very popular with her confessional mode of poetry. She confesses whatever has happened in the course of her life. Some events have given her happiness, some events have given her sadness, and with a great deal of frankness, she shares all those experiences with the readers. She made an attempt to explore the emotional lives of women, how certain circumstances leave a lasting impression on the minds of women in the society. She has published many short stories and novels in Malayalam, and they have become very popular as well. Her autobiographical work titled My Story, which came out in 1976, brought her immense fame. Her first book of poetry titled Summer in Calcutta, which came out in 1965, gave her great deal of recognition. Normally, she writes about intensely personal experiences, and you have one such example in this poem as well. Before moving on to the actual poem, let us try to understand the meaning of some difficult words. This will help you to understand the poem better. Drain. You will come across a word drain in the poem. It means to make something empty. Peculiar means unusual or strange. Mirth means gladness or amusement. Hedge means a fence formed by bushes. Muffled means muted or made softer and difficult to hear. Blur means something that cannot be seen or heard clearly. Now let us move on to the actual poem, stanza by stanza. Let me read out the poem, the entire poem. Meanwhile, you can think about what the poet is trying to say through this poem as you move on. Today the world is a little more my own. No need to remember the pain a blue-frocked woman caused, throwing words at me like pots and pans to drain that honey-colored day of peace. Why don't you join the others? What a peculiar child you are. On the lawn, in clusters, sat my schoolmates sipping sugarcane. They turned and laughed. Children are funny things. They laugh in mirth at others' tears. I buried my face in the sun-warmed hedge and smelt the flowers and the pain. The words are muffled now, the laughing faces only a blur. The years have sped along, stopping briefly at beloved hearts and moving sadly on. My mind has found an adult peace. No need to remember that picnic day when I lay hidden by a hedge, watching the steel white sun standing lonely in the sky. Well, this is the poem. Now let us try to understand the content of the poem stanza-wise. Let me start from the beginning again. Today the world is a little more my own. Look at this line. This is a very significant opening line. The poet says that today the world is entirely her own. It means that she is now an adult, not a child any longer, and now she knows very well how to deal with life, how to take things that form the part of the journey of life. So she says, today the world is little more my own. I know how to manage the experiences of life. No need to remember the pain a blue-frocked woman caused. You may wonder who this lady, blue-frocked woman, might be. She is none other than her teacher in the kindergarten. One day, along with other children, the poet was taken for a picnic somewhere, accompanied by the teacher. And then a particular event happened which the poet still remembers and recalls in this poem. Though she says there is no need to remember the pain, it shows that that painful event which happened then still lingers in her memory, and it has entered deep into her heart so that she is unable to forget it so easily. But she says that event is not very significant at this particular stage of life where she has become an adult and so many years have passed now. No need to remember the pain a blue-frocked woman. Look at the word, blue-frocked woman. Though she says that there is no need to remember that, she remembers every detail of it. What dress the teacher wore that day, that is also there. Throwing words at me, look at that expression. The teacher said something which will be told to you later in the course of the poem. And those words are like stones. They are no more pleasant words which give you happiness. They make you sad. So she threw some words at me like pots and pans. Look at the simile which is used here. Pots and pans are objects which are commonly used in household for cleaning purposes, to drain something. And when you throw them, they make lot of sound. They make lot of harsh sound. They are not very pleasant to hear. So here the poet is trying to imply that the words which the teacher spoke on that occasion were so harsh that they were no more pleasant to hear. To drain that honey-colored day, look at the expression, honey-colored day. Honey gives you a lot of happiness to eat. It has wonderful smell as well, and it is transparent. Even the day was very bright. It was a very bright sunny day. The poet usually found a lot of enjoyment on such a day. That honey-colored day of peace, she wanted to have a very peaceful experience that day. But what the teacher said, why don't you join the others? What a peculiar child you are. Look at the comment. Here you can see in your mind's eye that the poet was sitting at a distance alone, keeping herself aloof from others. The other children were in groups and they were enjoying something. They were also very happy. But the teacher at this point notices that this girl is not there in the group of other children, and for her it appeared to be such a great fault, and she shouted very harshly at the child, "Why don't you join others?" For her it's a great mistake. And here you can note that the teacher has failed to understand the impact of these words on the mind of the child. The child is very innocent. A child's mind is like a blank slate. Whatever you throw, it makes an impression. And the teacher probably is unaware of the impact that these words will have on the child. So she shouted, "What a peculiar child you are." There is nothing peculiar about it actually. Some people want to stay away from others, and some people like to be in a group, and it all depends on their mental makeup, to what extent they want to associate themselves with others, to what extent they want to prefer to be alone. It is all left to their individual bent of mind. But the teacher has not taken it so seriously. So casually, using very harsh words, he said like this. And on the other side, on the lawn, in clusters, in groups, sat my schoolmates. My schoolmates sat there in groups. What were they doing? Sipping sugar cane. They were sipping sugar cane juice. They turned and laughed when the teacher said something loudly addressing the child. Their attention was drawn towards the child. All of them turned towards the poet and they laughed. Children are funny things. They laugh in mirth at others' tears. These words are very significant here. It was not a common laughter which makes us happy. It was that kind of laughter which indicates that something is wrong with you. And the child is hurt to a great extent, first of all by the words of the teacher, who calls her a peculiar child, an unusual child. And now she is hurt when her classmates laugh at her. It adds to her misery. And they turned and laughed. Children are funny things. It is not only children. You also come across grown-up people who are funny things. They laugh at others' tears. When you slip and fall, they don't give you a helping hand. Rather, they would find enjoyment in your pain. That's a common tendency among human beings. Nowadays, we have solution for almost everything, but we don't have any solution for this human misery, wherein people are unable to understand the pain of others. They lack what we call empathy. The poet says children are funny things. They laugh in mirth. In mirth means in joy. They find happiness in someone else's tears. I buried my face. For the poet it was enough. She could no longer tolerate the shame and the insult and the pain inflicted upon her. So she buried her face in the sun-warmed hedge. There was a hedge nearby which was a part of the fence, and she hid her face behind the hedge so that she can hide herself from the sight of other children, and smelt the flowers and the pain. This line is very significant. There she smelt the flowers which are there in the hedge, and also the pain. So a mixing of two feelings here. One is the smell of the flowers which you take in. At the same time you take in even the brutal insult which is inflicted upon you. The words are muffled now. So this is the first part of the poem, wherein The poet remembers the picnic day when she was terribly insulted by the teacher. And now, after so many years, when she tries to recall that experience, which is muted now, of course, it holds no significance to her as she is an adult now. But the words are muffled now, those words of the teacher are muffled, they are unclear now. And the laughing faces only a blur, and even the laughing faces of the children still form a part of her memory, but they are blurred now. They are also very unclear. The years have sped along, time and tide wait for none, you see. So no matter what happens in our life, whether it is pain or joy, it is immaterial. The days speed along. Here also, years have rolled by, stopping briefly at beloved halts and moving. Whenever there is something which is very pleasant in our life, there also time doesn't stop. Whenever we experience something which is very painful, there also it doesn't stop. Time moves on, and indirectly it is a blessing for us as well. Time moves sadly on. It will not allow us to get troubled by sad feelings permanently, nor does it allow us to enjoy a beautiful moment forever. So here the poet means to say that life is a beautiful mixture of both happy moments and sad moments as well. And how we deal with the pain is also very important. Circumstances put us under a painful situation. Painful situation arises due to various reasons. It may be mistake of others, mistake of ourselves, problem with the situation, problem with the consequences or the circumstances, whatever it might be. But as a human being, we should know the art of handling such pains in life as well. My mind has found an adult peace now. The poet is an adult now. The poet is no more a child with a very delicate feeling now. Again she stresses that line, no need to remember that picnic day. So that day, the pain is still there in her heart. But that holds no significance, because that is a bygone day, when I lay hidden by a hedge, watching the steel white sun standing lonely in the sky. The teacher found fault with the girl because she was lonely. She preferred to be lonely, of course. But she forgot the fact that even the white sun who shines brightly in the sky is also lonely. So being lonely doesn't make you peculiar any longer. It is your strength of mind. If being alone gives you happiness, you be alone. There is nothing wrong. But for the teacher, it appeared to be such a great fault. So this is the poem, very brief poem, which can be understood even by a common reader. But you have to approach the poem from two different perspectives. One is from the perspective of the child, which undergoes a situation which makes her unhappy, and the another is the perspective of the adult who looks back at the situation and recalls the same along the memory lane, and now thinks that that situation is no more relevant in her life. So we should know the art of forgetting painful experiences and move along the course of life as usual, just like the sun. Even the sun is hidden due to the presence of the clouds most of the time. But the sun never forgets his duty. He continues to rise again, give light to the world, and perform his duty absolutely frankly, no matter whether there is a cloud or not. So this is another perspective. Now let us try to summarize the poem briefly. Here is the summary of the poem, which is more relevant to all of you. Let me read out the summary and explain it once again. The Punishment in Kindergarten is an autobiographical poem. There are autobiographical elements in the poem because the poet makes an attempt to recall what has happened in her life earlier. By the famous Indo-Anglian poet Kamala. In this poem, she recalls one of her childhood experiences. The poem has two parts, the first being the description of the painful experience of the speaker during her kindergarten days, and the second, her attitude to the incident at present when she is no longer a child but an adult. Now, stanza-wise summary. When the speaker was in the kindergarten, one day the children were taken for a picnic. All the children except her were playing and making merry, but she alone kept away from the company of the children. Their teacher, a blue-frocked woman, scolded her, saying, "Why don't you join the others? What a peculiar child you are." You have to reproduce these lines in the summary. When all the other children who were sipping sugar cane heard these words, they turned and laughed at her. The child felt hurt. She became very sad at the words of her teacher. The laughter of the children made her sadder still. She thought that they should have consoled her rather than laughing at her. Filled with sorrow and shame, she hid her face in a hedge and wept thoroughly. This was indeed a painful experience to a little child in the nursery school. Now, after many years, she has grown into an adult. She is no longer a child who is very delicate. She has only a faint memory of the blue-frocked woman, none other than her teacher, and the laughing faces of her children. Now she has learned to have an adult peace and happiness in her present state as a grown-up person. Notice the use of the word adult peace. So along with the growing age, we should become more and more matured in our approach to life. So you should know the art of making a day a very peaceful, no matter what happens. Now there is no need for her to be perturbed, means disturbed, about that bitter kindergarten experience, which is no longer a very pleasant experience at all. With her long experience in life, she has learned that life is a mixture of joy and sorrow. She remembers how she has experienced both joy and sorrow of life. She is no more a lonely individual as she used to feel when she was a child. The speaker comes to the conclusion that there is absolutely no need for her to remember that day of picnic when she hid her face in the hedge watching the steel white sun that was shining lonely in the sky. Kamala Das seems to be nostalgic. She is reminiscent. She goes back along the memory lane of her life and recollects a very sad experience which she has undergone as a kindergarten child. There are certain expressions in the poem that are worth remembering. The child buried her face in the hedge and smelt the flowers and the pale. So these words are very significant. She smelt the flowers. On one hand, she could enjoy the fragrance of the wild flowers of the bush. And on the other side, she has to inevitably take in the painful experience created by the teacher and the other children. That is also inevitable. Smelt the flowers can be taken as an ordinary expression, but smelt the pain is something very evocative and expressive. It expresses something about the nature of the child. The child is so delicate, and the words of her teacher have boiled down deeply into her heart. In the first stanza of the poem, the poet describes the pain caused to the child, like throwing words like pots and pans. It is like throwing some harsh object at somebody. What happens then? The same thing has happened to the child. This again is a beautiful expression. The major theme of the poem is nostalgia, that is recalling some past experience, and the sense of moving on with life. How we have to take the incidents in our life on a plain field. It may be sad experience or a bitter experience or a happy moment. We should know the art of handling these, at least as an adult. So what has happened during the earlier days are something that should be blurred naturally. They should be thrown away from our mind, because human life is very short and precious. We cannot afford to waste our days focusing upon what has happened earlier. We have to move along the path of life in accordance with the pace of time as well. Now you have probable questions. How does Kamala Das describe her experience in kindergarten, or bring out the character of the poet as a child and as an adult? Analyze the theme of the poem, the punishment in kindergarten. These are some of the probable questions. While preparing this video lesson, I have referred to these websites which you can note down. Thank you. Have a nice day.